Lieutenant.
Morning, how are you? I have a few administrative things I have to do, so I'm gonna shut my mic off for a few to get this meeting going. I'll see you guys in just a minute.
Sure. Okay. Pull up a chair.
Coffee sounds like I might.
How's Abbey Road doing there, Bill?
It's good. It's good. One of our nicer roads in town, I think.
Yeah. Nice landscaping there.
Yeah, I like it. Little different.
Morning, everybody. We're gonna get going in just a couple minutes here, okay? All right, good morning, everybody. This is the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting for the town of Wakefield for June 24th, 2022. I'd ask everybody remain muted, and if you are going to speak, raise your hand, identify yourself by name and address, and speak clearly as transcription is now active. Remind everybody that the meetings will be audio and video recorded and posted to the town's website and WCAT. Item number 2 is attendance. I have Bill Renault, Steve Mayo, Dan Benjamin. Lois, is Lois on there, Dan? Get you on mute.
She's in the kitchen.
Okay, as long as she's present, that's good. We have Matt Keeley from VHB, and myself, Lieutenant Anderson. Anybody else that I missed from TAC?
John Connors is here.
And John Connors is here. Okay, thanks, John.
I'm here, Joe.
Joe Conway also here. Also, item number 2 is the approval of the meeting minutes from September 3rd, 2021 and April 29th, 2022. I think there was a bit of a typo on the agenda. There was a meeting in November and the minutes haven't been finalized. So do I have a motion for those 2 meeting minutes for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Renault. Second by Matt Keeley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Moving on to item number 3. Dan, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Moving on to item number 4, public engagement. If there's anybody that, any member of the public that has something for traffic advisory that isn't an agenda item, would like to speak, we'll give you 3 minutes to speak about any topic that you have a concern about with traffic. But if it relates to an agenda item, I'd ask that you hold it for that particular agenda item. So if anybody would like to raise their hand if they have anything. If not, we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Anybody from the public have anything for public engagement? I think most of what we've received is it relates to an agenda item. So we will move on to, we're going to take the agenda a little bit out of order as we have item number 7. Bill, would you like to introduce the bicycle and pedestrian improvement draft for us?
Yeah, sure. So, so the community development coordinator and myself have been working with MAPC to develop a townwide pedestrian and bicycle master plan to identify areas, that we would need to look to make improvements, looking at how essentially we move around the community and enhancing our multimodal transportation facilities throughout the town. So today, basically, MAPC will give a brief overview of some of the work that they've done to date, and really are looking for input from the TAC prior to going to make their final recommendations and essentially our rollout to the public, which will be happening in mid-July. So today essentially is just more of a I'd say is more of a opportunity for them to get perspectives from other members of the TAC today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to David. I'm going to mess your last name up, David, because I never go and say your last name. Lausenheiser? Is that close?
Thanks, Phil. Pretty close. David Lautzenheiser. I'm here with Jessica Belanger. We're both transportation planners at MAPC have been working on this project for the last year or so, and the focus of the project is really to look at how we can institutionalize improvements to safety, accessibility, and really encouragement for particularly walking and cycling, but that also includes rolling and scooters and wheelchairs and people with dogs and all that's the different types of users that use our trails and sidewalks and even our roadways, particularly cyclists. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica, and we'll tag team on the presentation going forward. So
thank you, David. Can someone give me host privileges so I can share my screen?
Yep, I was just going to ask who I should give them to, who had everything for us. Hold on one second.
And I'll just mention, as David said, my name is Jessica Belanger. I'm a transportation planner with MAPC, and I spend a lot of time in Wakefield walking your lake. So I'm somewhat familiar with some of the constraints, and I'm really excited to talk to you about some of the recommendations we have for the town of Wakefield.
Awesome, thank you.
Let's get going. So we are the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and this is a bicycle and pedestrian plan for the town of Wakefield. So it has July 14th, and that is our public meeting date. So you're getting sort of a preview. On the agenda today, we'd like to start off by providing an overview of the project. We'll review the existing conditions. We'll talk a little bit about our community engagement strategy. We'll provide some key recommendations and then a project action plan. And we'll finish up with some discussions and the closing remarks. The project team for the Wakefield Bike and Pedestrian Plan has been really Bill Renault, Erin Kukinda, David Lotzenheiser, and myself. We've met really frequently to review some of the recommendations and learn about sort of some of the progress made in town. In the project background, we're going to plan to build on your existing Complete Streets project. So I saw that there is a Complete Streets policy that's been implemented in Wakefield. So we're really trying to build upon that work and establish a comprehensive network of bike travel within the town. Thirdly, we'd like to establish an action plan for implementation. So a detailed strategy on moving forward, what you can do to really take action on some of these initiatives. So for the existing conditions in Wakefield, we had our data services put together a set of maps on the population density. They looked at vulnerable users. So those are folks over the age of 65, under the age of 18, and also with disabilities. We took an inventory of the sidewalk conditions, road classifications, crash rates from MassDOT data, and also looked at the network connectivity. Some of the existing infrastructure challenges in Wakefield are the lack of bike lanes, the sections of the rail trail that are still under construction, a narrow path around Lake Quantapowhat, and then the foot network path at Round Park in the town forest. There's some other initiatives taking place in Wakefield as this plan has been underway. So it's the Envision Wakefield, the reconstruction of downtown, the Wakefield to Linfield Rail Trail. The Wakefield Master Plan is also being conducted by MAPC currently. We have some colleagues that are working on that. The MBTA is rolling out their new bus network redesign. And then recently we know Judy had done the Safe Routes to Schools, and we actually met with Judy a little bit to learn about some of her takeaways from the Safe Routes to School program. Throughout the process, we've done multiple community engagement efforts. The first was we created a survey, and we had a large amount of responses from the community where they provided comments and ranked some of the barriers to walking, rolling, and cycling in Wakefield. We've conducted a few site visits. You'll see that's David right there in the town, where we walked around with a few residents, some of the folks from the Safe Streets Working Group, also some of the town staff. We've had a lot of engagement across like the Friends of Quantapowhat. Now we're meeting with the TAC Commission, Safe Routes to Schools, as I mentioned, and then we'll be having our second public meeting in just a few weeks. So I'll highlight just a couple of the survey questions that had notable, I guess, feedback or takeaways. 56% of respondents said the lack of sidewalk connectivity. a lack of multi-use trails, and poorly maintained sidewalks or crosswalks. So there's a clear desire to have better connection from Raycart Reservation to the town forest, wider path around the lake, missing sidewalks in poor conditions, and then conflicts between dogs and dog walkers when you're walking around the lake. A second barrier or concern was cycling in Wakefield, too much traffic, aggressive drivers, poor road conditions, and no bike lanes. Most of it has been excessive motor vehicle traffic, lack of multi-use trails, and missing bike lanes. There's a series of funding programs, and I know that Wakefield's taken advantage of many of them, which is great to see. But there's a number of existing infrastructure improvements, and we encourage folks to evaluate each program and determine which is really the best suited to address some of the community needs. For the project action plan, we want to review the completed projects, the projects that are in design or construction phase. We will rank the priority projects and then provide recommendations based on the segments. So this is my last slide before I turn it over to David, but here are some of the completed projects in Wakefield. The Greenwood and Main Street improvements, so that new pedestrian bump outs and signals, which is great to see. The project around Floral Way, that's been repaved, which helps with sidewalk connectivity and pedestrian use around the lake. Albion Street, the new pedestrian bump outs and crossing signage, as you can see in the photos, I took those. And then the improvements on Lowell and Salem Street. So sidewalk installation, narrowing the curb section, which is good for traffic calming. And that's been awarded for construction. And coming soon will be the Greenwood and Oak Street redesign. And that will help with traffic movements, tighten curbs, and shorten pedestrian crossings. So I'll turn it over to David.
All right, thank you, Jessica. I will go through some of the key recommendations of the plan, but first start with identifying some of the key needs or design needs for both pedestrians and cyclists. For pedestrians in particular, we're looking at complete sidewalk network on all major streets. Fortunately, Wakefield probably has maybe 80 or 90% of the street frontage has sidewalks, but there are some key gaps, which we'll talk about. Obviously, maintenance came up in the survey as a key issue. Tree roots that buckle the sidewalks and curb ramps may not be maintained or may not be existing. Crosswalks, obviously, like all road markings, need to be repaved at certain frequencies. Curb extensions, again, curb extensions are where there's parking, the curb extensions allow much shorter crossing and safer crossing for pedestrians that allow the pedestrian, particularly at streets with parallel parking, to provide the pedestrians more visible to drivers when they cross, as well as to reduce distances. We prefer that for the most cases that we have concurrent crossings at the signals as opposed to an exclusive phase, because that reduces the wait time for pedestrians to cross the street. Median refuge islands, that's which this photo does not have, a median refuge that allows certainly at mid-block crossings, but also at signalized crossings that allow for the pedestrian to cross halfway and then continue the crossing with the refuge island. Again, where that space allows. Next slide, please. All right, so some of the sidewalk recommendations that we have, or some of the key missing sidewalk sections. Number one is New Salem Street, which is the upper circle there. Part of New Salem is very industrial with lots of wide open driveways. So consideration of that to perhaps narrow some of the driveway openings and create a pedestrian safe sidewalks as there are none whatsoever. Forest Street, which I think is in the lower left there, goes up the hill. That's a key missing sidewalk section. It's very constrained there with some significant topography, so that'll be a design challenge to do that. Hemlock Road, which is the right circle, there is I guess there's redevelopment of the vote to text school or the school there. So there may be an opportunity. I'm sure there's an opportunity to put in sidewalks as part of that. That's also a DCR roadway. Couple others that I mentioned that are mentioned here, which are not circled, that are part of, I don't have them circled. I don't remember exactly where they are. So in any case, these are some of the other sections of sidewalks that are missing. The ones circled are longer stretches, but those that are mentioned below are some of the shorter sections of sidewalks, like along North Avenue, particularly on the west side, and some gaps in Elm and Parker Street. So our MAPC and it's certainly MassDOT policy is to have sidewalks on both sides. So any reconstructed street should have sidewalks on both sides of the street, particularly any arterial streets or collector streets. In full reconstruction. Obviously, we want to fill gaps with one is better than none in terms of sidewalks, and obviously there's context involved with the various challenges and limited rights of way and so forth. But in the ideal world, we have sidewalks at both sides on all of our streets, particularly all the non-local streets. And as I mentioned before, that the survey results, brought up the maintenance and sidewalk issues, and that's a common theme in many communities. It's not unique to Wakefield for sure. So next slide. Needs of cyclists. Again, as Jessica mentioned, there are currently no bicycle lanes or bicycle facilities per se in Wakefield. There's a segment of the rail trail that's complete but not yet open. I think because of we have to implement the crossing features there, which need to be done before that's open. The bicycle lane network, our design standards are not going to protected where possible. When I say the word protected bike lane, that's a sidewalk that's like shown in the photo here. The left bike lane is up basically on a curb level or on the sidewalk level, has some physical protection between the travel lane and the bicycle lane. That does require more space. A standard bike lane is which is shown on the right side there, is basically 5 feet. And that's next to the travel lane. Whereas the protected bike lane will take maybe 7 feet of space, 7 or 8 feet of space. So there's more constraints to that, but they also provide safer, accommodating facility for use. We discourage angled parking, and where it does, back end parking provides much better visibility for drivers coming in and out of that angled parking. The typical angled parking, as drivers has limited visibility backing out, and so cyclists are vulnerable in that situation. I know that downtown Wakefield plan, I think, retains the back end parking, but the protected bike lanes are on the other side between the sidewalk and the parking, if I recall. So that eliminates the safety issues there. And obviously, the needs for cyclists to have a connected network and safe access to the key points of key destinations. Next. So another slide that gives us schematics of protected bike lanes. This is from NACTO, and sort of the conventional bike lanes and some of the design criteria for that. Next. So this is a generalized map of some of the key locations where we think there's space to do bike lanes, protected bike lanes, Main Street in the design, Main Street south in the vicinity of Round Park, which is not circled, and Farm Street, which is over by the high school. There's also fairly wide space for protected bike lanes. Conventional bike lanes, which are the 5-foot bike lanes along the road. Albion Street, Prospect, Water, Salem. Albion, Prospect, and Water, you have a 30 or 32 foot cross section. So you're looking at the current pavement width. So you're looking at a 5-foot bike lanes and 10 or 11 foot travel lanes in those sections. Salem Street, which is basically heads out to the mall there in Linfield, the Whole Foods and the other shops there. There's not currently space on the existing pavement. So if there's a roadway reconstruction, we look at the opportunity to put in bike lanes and extend the sidewalk network there. Next. So now I want to talk about what we call the sort of the higher priority or the top level corridors that we're looking into. Basically what we call the Greenway Vision Map. It's a goal to create a connected network of safe and higher quality facilities, corridors that are connected. So you think about if you can, it's somewhere where you can take your 8 or 10-year-old on a bike ride and feel safe through that corridor. Except for the rail trail, we do not have, and the lake, there's not really a separate right of way to do a nice big wide trail off the roadway right of way. So we're looking at on street to look at ways to accommodate this. We're working with several of the state legislators on this process to look at what we call the Mystic Highlands Greenway, which is the north-south corridor. And the Mystic Highlands Greenway essentially connects the lake and the rail trail south into Melrose and Malden. It connects up with the extensive trail network from Malden south along the Malden and Mystic rivers. We're looking at spurs that go from down to Wakefield to Stoneham and the Tri-Community Bikeway there, which runs into Woburn and Winchester. Also connecting over to Breakheart Reservation and the schools over in that region as well. We've also added to this regional network the east side of Lake Quannapout. That's not shown on this map, but that's also of concern. Also, we've looked at, and again, I could not update this map in time from this meeting, but we're looking at, instead of continuing on North Avenue underneath 95, extension of North Avenue, as the town of Redding is looking at putting in a shared use path along the road there by the Home Depot and Jordan's as part of some planning and projects there. Yeah, so that's sort of the major Greenway corridors. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, I just mentioned the Mystic Highlands Greenway and the location for that. In addition to providing separate shared use paths along some stretches of roadway along Main Street, we're also looking at using residential streets where possible, low traffic residential streets. And the photo on the left is from Melrose, just south of the Wakefield line. And this is an example of how they've striped and sort of signed their neighborhood greenway. That'll be part of this corridor in a place where maybe not space for separation, though there's some space here. In this particular photo, we show what we call a contraflow lane. So it looks to be like a one-way street, but allows bicycles to go in the opposite direction. Next slide. Along Main Street by Round Park in that vicinity, there's space to do what we show in this photo, ways to eliminate parking on one side, because the demand for parking is quite low on these streets. You still provide parking on one side of the street. And with that extra space, you can either widen the sidewalk to make it a two-way shared use path, or sort of in the meantime, you can stripe, as shown in this image, basically bike lanes with a flex post on one side. So a couple of different ways to dice it up, but there's ample space on the roadway to actually do some sort of protected facility for cyclists and pedestrians. Next. Lake Quannapout, and as all of you know, and there's a recent emphasis to try to improve the path infrastructure there, and so the first phase of that's almost completed there, as was mentioned by Jessica down on the south side of the lake there. And so our overall goal with the Lake Quannapout is to create basically a 12-foot wide continuous shared use path around the lake that allows for, right now, even one person passing another is constrained in some locations. And so, often people are walking with other people or dogs. So allowing people to pass each other with their dog or friend and be able not have to jump into the street is really the goal here. And this will be over a series of projects and a series of, over several years, but that's the overall goal. I think so. Again, the short section on the south end of the lake by Church Street has been complete, and the next phase is, thank you. And then next slide. On North Avenue, this is our North Avenue right now has plenty of space to actually to reconfigure the roadway. The current pavement width is about 32 feet, though it varies a little bit. And we basically recommend reducing the roadway width to 24 feet, which allows for 11-foot travel lanes and the standard 1-foot shoulder. And then that leftover space is then apportioned to, didn't finish writing that, but basically if you see on the image on the lower right, it basically brings the sidewalk from its current condition shown in the photo, which is 5 or 6 feet wide, to a 12-foot shared use path with a buffer between the roadway and the path. That buffer could be some landscaping. Obviously, the power poles would be moved into that location. And so that creates an ample space for people to use that corridor. Next. And I'm just kind of going around the lake here. On the north side, working with the, yeah,
Sorry.
that's right. With the north side, it's Quantified Parkway on the right. That's basically a narrow sidewalk. And I know they're working with the developer of the project to, and as that goes forward, that we're going to make improvements to the existing paths and widen it and create a continuous corridor that meets this goal along Quantified Parkway. So that's coming soon. And next slide. On the east side, there's some of the issues here, as you can see in the photos, and these were taken, and we walked around the lake, and, people have to use the street essentially because it's just not wide enough to if you're running or if you're on your bike or something, you're in the street, and that's designated parking, but there's some parking use, but not a lot. So it's too narrow. Obviously, as you see, particularly in the above photo, there's not room to go toward the lake in most cases. And some of the parking is prohibited in some short sections, like on the above photo. Next slide, this is our proposal. So the current condition, generalized condition on the left. The current condition is a current pavement width of 36 feet. That includes the parking and the travel lanes. There's and shoulder as shown here. There's about a 5-foot sidewalk and a couple feet for the power for the light poles. On the right, we're looking at, this is sort of a proposed condition that would do several things. It would again narrow the driving lane to 24 feet. Again, the 11-foot travel lanes, 1-foot shoulder, widen the sidewalk to 12 feet. We'd extend into the right of way a bit on the east side to allow for a northbound bike lane on the east side, preferably protected. And in some cases, the sidewalk, particularly on the north half of the lake, there's no sidewalk on the east side. So as any part of reconstruction project would provide the wider shared path on the lake side, a northbound bike lane, and newer reconstructed sidewalks as needed with curbing on that section of the lake. So that's our recommendation, which, by the way, would eliminate parking along. To do this, we'd have to eliminate the parking along Main Street along the lake. Next slide. I think we're almost done here. We could consider establishing a bicycle and pedestrian committee, and I know the function of this committee is to analyze and responsible for traffic and safety, pedestrians and cyclists. But pedestrian bike committee allows more public interaction and helps to review projects and be eyes and ears on some of and providing input on the design of some of these projects. Obviously implementing the plan and then really the function of not only accommodating pedestrians and cyclists, but also being there to review designs and help make the project better for everyone as part of that process. So I think that's the last slide. Next. Yeah. So Jessica and I are happy to take questions. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, David and Jessica. I think that was a great overview, not only of what you have planned for or envisioned for the future, but kind of what we're already doing now in town. And I think, Bill, that's something that we should probably, if we don't already have on the town's website, because I think an overview like that shows how many moving parts there are to what's going on in town and how they connect with some of the other future projects. So I'm a big proponent of the rail trail. I think that no matter what we do with bike paths, having a dedicated, protected, shared use pathway, rail trail type type setup is something that people really look for. You see a lot of it on the North Shore in the last decade. A lot of towns have taken advantage of the rail trail, and I think that, you know, no matter what we do on our public roads, people look for a separate path that's away from vehicular traffic. They want to feel safe. They want to feel like they're separated from cars, and I think we have the ability to do that and integrate some of our existing roadways with that path. So it's exciting to see what could be in the future for Wakefield, especially as it connects to other towns and existing rail trails. So it's definitely a good thing. My only one concern would just be the parking. I know a lot of people, especially for their lunch break, drive to the lake to take advantage of walking or jogging. So I just don't know where that parking would go. And parking is very tight, and we've tried to do the best we can to keep the turnover in the downtown area for our businesses and for people that are looking to walk and jog the lake and things like that. So just one consideration: where would that parking go? Because it's a big stretch, but I know that obviously you have constraints there on how you could accomplish everything, and eliminating parking would probably have to be one option.
We looked at I mean, the only way to widen the path is to take something, right? And, do we do a one-way street? And that really wasn't a feasible option. So, parking is really the only option. Fortunately, there's parking on the north end of the lake. There's parking, in the downtown, and, maybe encourage people to park closer to downtown where they can go get something to eat and support the businesses downtown. I think the redevelopment plan for Main Street will also add some parking spaces. So, I think it's, I think there's better uses, and others can speak to how much that parking is used. The few times I've been out there, there have been a few cars parked there, but it's not been heavy use. But that may just been the time I've been there.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the time of day. I agree with you there. I think we've had to do a lot to ensure that the downtown parking turnover is consistent. And I think that if we drive people into the downtown, we're going to kind of be back to square one with that. And we definitely don't want to do that. So I just think it's something that as a town, we'd have to kind of figure out, what can we do and how can we be creative to allow for more parking around the lake and still accomplish that goal of, like you said, you have to take from somewhere. So it probably would be the parking. So what can we do to create a space or do something to increase the parking situation? But that would be my only concern. Any members of the Traffic Advisory Committee have any questions or comments before I turn it over to other town officials and then to public participation? Steve?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant. I think that on the parking situation around the lake, I think once the development occurs up at the head of the lake there, there is that parking lot that will be for the public, that we could signage towards. And that's going to be improved and what have you. There is some additional parking up there. So I think that during the week, normal weekdays, we could handle it. One thing I think we need to be aware of is there are a handful of days a year when parking around the lake is just packed, for the festival by the lake and things like that. And I think one thing we need to be, and frankly, people can find other way to park and bike or ride there, and that's fine. But I think we have to be aware of making sure we do a lot of signage in the neighborhoods, because when they spill out into the neighborhoods, that causes a lot of problems. People are not all that, don't have parking etiquette. They block people's driveways. They don't care. They've got to run down there and get their, dried flower wreath, and they can't stop from getting it. So I think we've been aware of that. But I think on the normal day-to-day, we can probably find some other places. So thank you to MAPC for this. This is exciting and linking up to these areas. I've been convinced by my board I need to bike, so I'm going to go out because I can't walk and run anymore with my knees. So I'm hoping the biking is better.
But I I think it's a good point though, Steve, because I mean, there's nothing that says we couldn't design something in that where there's a way to, make that bike lane, parking for, certain festivals. But the majority of the time it ends up as a bike lane. So we can definitely look at different alternatives like that. So there's some good.
If I can just jump in, I would just add also MAPC does parking studies. So in those cases, we actually go out and we monitor the parking hour by hour and sort of track like how long vehicles are staying and sort of watch some of like the anecdotal feedback. Like somebody might be walking into a bank or like where they're going, and that actually can be connected to the RMB. We can track if the person's in the state or outside of the state. And some of that data can be anonymized and sort of analyzed, and we provide like an analysis of the parking and how it's being used. That can be helpful in determining like whether it's a good decision to remove parking or keep it. We've done that a lot in the city around bus lanes and some other interventions. And you've raised a good point as far as like that new development at the north side of the lake. I think there'll be a huge influx of users coming to visit people in those apartments. Maybe people going to the businesses that are part of the development, and there might be a way to start some informal agreements. So for example, across the way, I know there's like that cross country bank and some of those other businesses on the east side of the lake. And it might be good to have like allow people to park in those businesses at night if they're just going to be walking around the lake. But those are some things that can be formulated when you do a parking study. You can make conditions, determine the conditions, and find out what's really suitable and what's possible. Another challenge too with the parking is that comes up often is the farmers market. So is there a place to reallocate space, or is there some way that we can provide some incentive for people who ride bikes to the farmers market over someone who drives a car? So just some considerations.
Excellent. Matt?
Thanks. I had the same concern when I saw eliminate parking on the east side, so I won't add on to that, but just wanted to say that that stuck out to me as well. I had a general question about whether or not you looked at any specific routes, tying to the train station. Again, it's sort of related to parking. If people had, I don't know how many people, bike to the train station, currently, but if there were some good connections, through neighborhoods to the train station, that could help with, getting people there safely and not needing to take their car and park around the station or on neighborhood streets.
Well, there is a whole section of Main Street by Greenwood that is designated for parking, but in the current and post-ish pandemic era, we're not being used. So in theory, that could potentially be space for protected bike lane, but I know there's an agreement to keep those spaces even though they're not currently used. So, so yeah, I mean, it's all trade-offs, right? Of I think, as Jessica alluded to, do you provide parking, all the parking you need for the entire year in a space, or you deal with it, the special events, and reduce the parking and create a much better public space year round by, enhancing that path network. I would also note that, as my understanding, there's no parking meters downtown. I mean, if you're going to improve turnover and parking, you provide a fee and keep that turnover, going, so that you're not parking all day in front of a business and not shopping there. So
I think, Dan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm thinking, is there any thought of having some kind of educational program on this? I've been driving for 60 years, but I haven't been on a bicycle. And is there any thought of the MAPC having a forum on bicycle safety, like they used to have years ago, having maybe a program in the school showing the rules and regulations of riding in the bike lanes? And it's something maybe the police department in Wakefield could jump in on, or the schools. I see all these bike lanes and I have no idea which way they're going, this way, that way. And I think a lot of people don't. And I'm wondering, with all the bike lanes, is there any regulations or anything that people are going to know? And how are they going to know the regulations? I mean, I go get in my car, but I got a driver's license. I had to go for an exam and learn how to drive on the streets. When you buy a bicycle, you hop on it and ride. And I think there should be more education for young students, maybe this time of year or just before school starts, on just what a bicycle lane is. And do I wear a helmet? Don't I wear a helmet? Is an electric vehicle electric bike, a bike, or is it a motor vehicle? You know, that's what I'm thinking.
You bring up a good point, Dan. So this would be a good time to introduce our new traffic advisory liaison, Councilor Julie Smith Galvin. So Maureen Butt was our liaison, but she is now chair of town council. So she doesn't have time for us anymore, although she does today. She joined us for a little bit. So Julie, she's
joined Lieutenant Anderson. I joined to do a warm handoff to Julie. I also I would like to talk about that presentation, but I'll let Julie go first and answer Dan's questions.
Yes, I mean, we're having that Safe Streets event, and Julie, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that as far as the educational piece that we're participating in as a police department with the bike rodeo. But I think you know, Dan brings up a good point about maybe our bicycle officers presenting in the schools, because our bicycle officers not only do they patrol on bicycle, but they when they attend the training, which is called Cobweb, it's not only to teach them how to ride as a patrol officer on a bicycle, but also how to educate cyclists that they may come in contact with while they're on patrol. But I think that would be a good way to do that through the schools. So Julie, I'll turn it over to you, but good point.
Yes, and thank you to David and Jessica. That's a great presentation. I know we've been a bit delayed in giving it to the community, but I'm really encouraged by what I see today, and thank you so much. And Lieutenant Anderson is being very humble, because really the Wakefield Police Department on its own initiative has started a bike safety program. They are pairing up with the Safe Streets Working Group, which is a citizen-based group, not a government group, to be at our July 17th event around the lake, where the town is working with us to close the southbound lanes of Main Street and part of Church Street, and will include a bike rodeo and bike helmet fitting. And a bike rodeo is by design to teach particularly young people how to maneuver, how to use hand signals and whatnot. But Dan, you bring up a very good point. I mean, I think David and Jessica probably can help us on this as well. I mean, bicycling in particular is changing with new technologies and different levels of electric bikes. And I mean, we're seeing them all over Wakefield now. And so I think we probably have to stay ahead of that as well. But I'm super excited to be the liaison to this, and very encouraged by what I see from MAPC. I think it's going to be a great tool for us. I think you might be muted. Okay, well, so maybe while can I ask, can you guys still hear me? Okay, okay. Can I ask one question? I think it was David who brought it up, or maybe when you suggest a bicycling committee, I'm just kind of wondering what you're thinking. I know we have the Safe Streets Working Group, which is, again, a citizen-based, not an official. But we really modeled that on Melrose, which I think started as an official and then kind of morphed into a more citizen. And so I'm wondering kind of what best practices you've seen there.
Yeah, the town I live in has a pedestrian committee, a bicycle committee, and a transit committee. And obviously not all towns need, you know, and then those committees meet together occasionally to talk about joint issues. On a smaller town like Wakefield, you know, having that bicycle pedestrian committee together, and typically in the format, as I mentioned, it's typically the town manager or you know, the select board, you know, is official appointed, and it's usually a representative of, you know, a few staff members, but it's mostly, you know, volunteers from the public and you know, a diverse group of people that provide feedback. They meet typically once a month, and they, you know, the town brings up, you know, design projects, you know, that the committee may bring up agenda items, talk about safety issues. And we just mentioned here about education for cyclists, and, you know, talk about education for drivers and pedestrians as well. And talk about the e-bikes and, you know, whatever is current in this issue. But particularly, so the regular piece is looking at projects and helping assist the town in a way, you know, so the trifecta of, you have the town staff, you have this sort of town appointed committee, and then you have the advocacy groups, like as Julie is leading as well. So it takes a village to create a village, I guess. Yeah, it just increases the investment in these facilities and in these programs by this committee is largely town staff, but it's a way to also involve citizens, as you do with Conservation Commission and planning boards and other boards in the town.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, if it's possible, on anything that's done in Wakefield, could you contact the Commission on Disabilities? And, I see a lot of people coming down from Harts Hill, 101 Broadway, and those little scooters and everything. And they're probably going to be using these lanes also, but, just notify the Commission on Disabilities what's going on.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to any members of the public if you'd like to raise your hand and comment. If there is anybody that has anything. I'm not seeing, I actually have Paul, if you could identify yourself by name and address, and you can unmute.
Good morning. My name is Paul Rybicki. I'm at 152 Parker Road. Been a Wakefield resident for a long time. Been on Parker Road 35 years. We have a right-of-way for a sidewalk that was never put in when the development was built in 1950. I've been working with the town ever since one of the neighbors was hit while bicycling back in 2004. So I'm at the end of Parker Road, and it's a fairly busy road going into Redding. I'm wondering if there's any possibility with this grand plan that they're looking at putting a sidewalk in for the last 6 houses in Wakefield. That was first question.
I can jump in on that. Yeah, it definitely is highlighted as one of the infill projects. So when MAPC talked about the sidewalk infill areas and areas, that was one of the sections that was discussed. So it's definitely on the radar. Let's put it that way.
All right, Paul, again.
Thank you. Since you guys are in a partnership with looking at the regional situation, if you could, somebody could look at the interface between Wakefield and Redding. So when Parker Road transitions into Redding, it becomes Ash Street, same road. What happens is the narrow street with no sidewalk becomes incredibly narrow for one length of about 90 feet, and there's about a 16-inch curb. So you literally have to run if cars are coming. It's extremely dangerous, but it's a Redding situation. Basically, Wakefield and Redding, when they did the sidewalk development, they just didn't put sidewalks to the end. And it's a glaring safety issue. And what triggered this was my neighbor was literally hit 18 years ago on a bike.
So Redding also has a similar committee for traffic advisory. It's something that we could send over to them and see if they could not only investigate that, but work jointly with the town if there's anything, any improvements that are made there in the future. That's it's a good point. Thank you, Paul. Anybody else from the public before we continue on with the agenda? Marion?
And I'm gonna use my time to speak as a member of the public. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm so glad. I second Dan's request to have it shared widely. I think there's some great recommendations on it, and I echo all the staff here, Steve and others. Working with Safe Streets, working with other community groups to kind of implement some of these and kind of let's start prioritizing when we're going to see some of this stuff. As Steve said, I'm not the one pushing for him to bike, that's Julie, but I am pushing for more people to walk. And I'm realizing, with gas prices going up, people are going to walk more. People are going to walk to their parks, walk to schools instead of, getting in their car. And so that's really my priority, Bill and Lieutenant Anderson, Aaron, as I look when I walk to the parks and there's not sidewalks on one street, or when I walk from my commuter rail and one side doesn't have a sidewalk and the other does, I think we really need to prioritize those. I just was talking to Steve yesterday about us maybe having a transit committee in town. We don't have a committee that kind of traffic advisory is great, but I think it's car focused. And I think to really have a committee that looks at pedestrians, bikes, and public transportation is something maybe time has come in our town, as we have, 2 commuter rails and a bus line that goes through. So something to mention here that I think the council with Steve will be looking at. I would be, we look to Melrose for a lot of things. They have a sustainability person in their DPW. And I think looking at all of it, all of these issues are interconnected, so just something that we'll be looking forward to. But thank you for that presentation and some concrete items that we can do moving forward.
Thank you. Jessica and David, do you have any closing remarks? It was excellent presentation, and I think gives us kind of a good picture moving forward. But anything before we continue on?
Just a final note, I would encourage crosswalk design, like as in Bill's screensaver. I think that might be a famous album cover, but what we call the continental crosswalk design, that's reflective and visible. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this process and work with you all.
Yeah, I would just add, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been really wonderful to learn a lot more about Wakefield and also plan for growth as the town continues to work on a lot of these new initiatives, and you have really a growing body of people moving in, and I can see the changes, and it's really amazing to see.
Thank you both. All right, we're going to move on to
Lieutenant, I think that Erin wanted to say something.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make a plug real quick for every, whoever's watching this or, spread the word. We will be having a virtual info session about this plan we just discussed now, with breakout sessions on July 14th at 7 p.m. It's on our website. So if you could, spread the word, I know we'd really appreciate it. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I was going to say the same thing, so that's great.
All right, excellent. Moving on to item number 5, intersection review. We received a request from residents of Pleasant Street asking us to review the possibility of making that intersection a 4-way stop intersection. The request came following a recent crash and a history of more vehicle crashes since their last appearance at TAC in 2018. Just kind of a brief overview of that. Kathleen Schaff, Pleasant Street, reached out to me regarding concerns over a recent crash where vehicles were towed from the scene, and she reports other crashes throughout the years there. She presented the same concerns in 2018 at a traffic advisory committee meeting. At that meeting, the police department did not have any reportable crash history there. However, Matt Keeley researched records submitted to Mass DOT, and he had found 7 crashes reported to them from 2010 to 2018. Those crashes were likely minor, in which case we wouldn't have a police report on file. Some of the suggestions from that meeting in 2018 were to look at pavement markings, possible flashing lights for the crosswalk there, and to see if a street light could be moved to provide better lighting for the crosswalk. Chief Scory, then chair of traffic advisory, expressed concerns about the pitch of Salem Street and vehicles' ability traveling north to stop in the winter months for a potential stop sign there. Bill Renault at the time believed that there was enough sight distance, that 4-way stop wasn't necessary. And that's kind of the overview of where we were in 2018 and the request now. Before I turn it over to Mrs. Schaff and anybody else that would like to comment on the request, I'll tell you that I did look into the street light piece for the crosswalk. There is a newer style LED street light there. However, it's across the street from the crosswalk. I asked the light department to look into another adjacent pole, which would be on the southern side of Salem Street, to see if there's any possibility of adding a street light fixture to that pole there, to see if that would help illuminate that crosswalk better. It seems like it's kind of a challenge to illuminate that crosswalk, because there's no utility poles right there at the crosswalk, unfortunately. So they're going to investigate if changing that fixture over to a floodlight, even though it's across the street from the crosswalk, would be beneficial or not, if it would actually provide enough illumination for the crosswalk, or if the other pole, which is still a distance away, if adding a street light there would help. So that's the street light piece that I'm waiting to hear back on, and I will turn it over to the Sharps.
Hi, Kathleen Scharf, 69 Pleasant Street. So we are on Pleasant, and this is Paul Scharf, also 69 Pleasant Street. We are just north of Salem Street on Pleasant Street. And as you are almost absolutely all aware, Salem Street is extremely busy and Pleasant Street is fairly busy. So we are here again to ask that the intersection of Salem and Pleasant be made into a four-way stop. And I might just add, wouldn't it be easier to move the crosswalk than to mess with the light? Since this street is now under construction, if you hear beeping noises, it's the trucks in the street outside us. Seems to me if they're going to have to realign Pleasant Street as part of street work, that they could black out the existing crosswalk and just move it across the street. Is there a reason that couldn't be done to improve that crosswalk light situation? Move the crosswalk?
Especially since now there will be sidewalks on both sides of
Yeah.
the street. So it could be easily, it might be a good move.
Anyway, to back up, we're here for the second time to say this is a very dangerous intersection. When I talked on the phone with Lieutenant Anderson last week, he could see 11 reported crashes since 2016 in that intersection, which is a lot. And what we know from living here is that doesn't represent the stupendous number of near misses that you hear all the time there, because people coming in each direction on Salem Street are coming up a hill and really can't see. And if you try stopping at the existing stop signs at that intersection, you actually, if you correctly stop behind the line initially, you have to move forward to have any chance of being able to see both ways down the street. So we are here to ask again that be made into a four-way stop. And that's really the bottom line. It's a dangerous intersection. I hope we're not waiting for someone to be killed. And apropos of people talking about making it safer to walk, this is a route that we see being used all the time by people who are walking kids to the Dull-Bear School, whose district includes the area that is south of Salem Street on Pleasant Street, that whole area there. And also we see kids walking home from the middle school, which is obviously south of that intersection as well. So we got kids crossing there. We have what I would assume is regarded as a high rate of crashes and near misses, because it's very hard for people to see when they come up those two hills, or to see from the existing stop signs whether anybody is coming up those hills.
Can I add one more thing about those existing stop signs? We have a phenomenon there where it is so hard to see who's coming that the people are stuck there waiting for a long time trying to cross Salem Street onto Pleasant Street, which when they finally see a way to go quickly, they hit their accelerator very hard and they're actually exceeding the speed limit by the time they get in front of our house. But at any rate, there's a lot of repressed road rage by sitting there waiting to go through across Salem Street on Pleasant, which is played out once they get going by people speeding on Pleasant Street. So that's another piece of the action.
Okay, thank you both. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this agenda item? You could either raise your hand or you could unmute and identify yourself. All right, if there's nobody else from the public, Bill, I think I might turn it over to you as far as that crosswalk concern. I just looked into the streetlight issue because in the event it couldn't be moved, that was something that was brought up at the according to the minutes at the last meeting. So I placed
It doesn't sound like it's a difficult thing. I'll take a look at it today.
Okay. Matt, you want to talk a little bit about the crash statistics? So I mean, I have I came up with the same thing you did from SDOT. It looks like 11 crashes since from 2015 to 2019. And Mass DOT was not all that searchable back in 2018. Now it's a little bit better. The public can actually jump on there, which is a good thing. They're getting there in terms of transparency on the data that they have. But so it looks like 11 crashes. Out of these crashes, 3 had minor injury. The rest were property damage. I don't know to what degree. I can say the most recent crash that probably sparked this complaint back up again was caused by somebody that didn't stop for the stop sign on Pleasant Street. So, we spoke on the phone today, and an argument can be made that if somebody was stopped at a stop sign on the other side on Salem Street, that maybe it would have avoided that crash. But there's not a whole lot you can do when somebody doesn't stop for an existing stop sign. But I can definitely see that argument that had there been a stop sign on the other side, they may have avoided that crash. I think before I turn it over to you, Matt, I guess my concerns would be the same as Chief Scory's, and that's the pitch of Salem Street. If you're heading, I guess we'll call it east northeast, is quite a bit of a pitch there to have cars stop adequately in the winter. That creates another issue if they're sliding through that intersection. My other concern would be the short stretch of Salem Street, and would this create enough queuing where we create a backup into the Main and Salem intersection? We see a good amount of traffic on both sides of Salem Street during peak hours and rush hours. So I wouldn't want to create a situation where we're interfering with another intersection. So a lot of my concerns with parking and traffic, and in my experience with traffic advisory, is that we try to make one good decision to increase safety or to increase parking or whatever our goal is, right? And sometimes we end up either displacing that problem or creating a new problem somewhere else that we didn't either foresee or didn't consider. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not against having a 4-way stop here. I can definitely see some benefits if there was a 4-way stop. I'm not sure that the 11 crashes are statistically significant or not. I'm going to leave that up to the engineers to tell me whether it is or isn't. It's a couple crashes a year. I would like to see 0 crashes throughout the town at all intersections, but I know that's it's just an impossibility. But I certainly don't want to. I don't want to create a bigger issue, and I don't want to overlook adding stop signs if we could possibly prevent a more serious crash. Fortunately, to this day, we haven't had one. But I'm going to turn it over to Matt and then to Bill to see.
Thanks. So a couple things on the crash records. The reason we reported the 2015 to 2019 is not because there's no data for anything after 2019. It's just that MassDOT doesn't consider that particular data set closed yet. It's not sort of finalized and verified. So MassDOT tells us each year, here is the most recent 5 years, and right now it's 2015 to 2019. So like the tenant said, we found 11 crashes. One of those was actually a parked vehicle that was a little bit away from the intersection. So there's essentially 10 crashes over those 5 years. Statistically, 10 out of 10 of them were angle crashes. So that suggests to me that it is could be a sight distance issue and difficulty seeing turning out of the side streets. MassDOT doesn't give us a detailed report, so I'm sort of left to just trying to look into some of the details they do provide, but that's what it seems like to me. We don't have enough volume information there to say whether or not it has a crash rate higher than, higher than average. We would need to collect some volumes if we wanted to make that determination. And would also need to collect some speed information if we want to just get the data we need to determine if a four-way stop is the appropriate consideration here. One of the criteria for implementing a four-way stop is a lack of sight distance from the side street. And I think that's the primary case here. So I think there's definitely a case to implement the four-way stop, but we would just need to collect a little bit more data and do a little bit more analysis just to make sure that that's the right treatment. To your point, Lieutenant, I don't think, and we may have discussed this in 2018, I don't think we would have an issue with queuing from Pleasant Street back to Main Street. I think we're looking at about 700 feet. And I don't, on the surface, that's not a major concern for me. But again, if there is high volumes, we don't want to stop people unnecessarily if we don't have to. But my recommendation is if we want to pursue this, we would need to just do a little bit more analysis.
Matt, would that analysis provide us with a like a level of service, like an intersection rating? Like how is that? I know we see it a lot with the development traffic studies, but how would we know what the rating is for this intersection?
Yeah, we could do a level of service analysis. But that particular analysis is more related to the capacity of the intersection and the delay that the people on the side streets experience.
Okay.
I think in this case we'd want to do more of a safety evaluation, do sight distance measurements, do speed measurements on Salem Street, and those types of things. I mean, if the sight distance constraints are from vegetation in people's yards, that's a losing battle that I don't think we can say that that's the solution. You know what I mean? If there's always going to be a very tough sight line because of if it's a fence or a shrub or something, that is what it is. And if that's the case, then I think all-way stop control should be considered.
No, I agree, and I think that we could, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, we could probably do a lot of that in-house without having to put that.
Yeah, we have an on-call contract too for some of the data collection stuff that we do. We can do the site distance stuff internally here. So yeah, that basically was going to be my comment as well. Collect the data and we can bring that back at the next meeting and discuss it.
All right, anybody else from traffic advisory have any comments or questions? We'll start with Dan.
I could be totally wrong, but didn't they years ago have a flashing light there in the middle of the intersection and then they took it away? I could be totally wrong, but something tells me there used to be one of those like flashing yellow.
I don't know. That's a good question.
And then somebody said they could see it from their bedroom window or something and they moved it.
It wouldn't surprise me. Mrs. Schaff?
That flashing light, I don't know if there ever was one, but I know that the last time we came to this group to talk about this intersection, somebody mentioned the possibility of a flashing light. And it seemed to me that at the time, everyone agreed that that would be so irritating to the people because this is a fairly densely populated intersection. And I could totally see how that would drive you mad if you lived right there. And it seems to me at the last meeting, it was a foregone conclusion that was a bad idea.
Yeah, it's also because people get used to it and they tend to not even notice it after a while. So people driving on Salem Street will totally tune out flashing yellow after a certain period of time.
Anybody else from traffic advisory, any comments or questions? So I think we will we'll move forward with Matt and Bill's recommendations to do some measurements and check speeds and volume in that area. Bill's going to look into moving the crosswalk, and we'll come back at the next meeting with those findings and continue on with that recommendation of a possibility of a four-way stop there. I think that's a good direction. So unless anybody has anything else, I think we will, we'll do that and we'll continue on to the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. Item number 6, we have the Northeast Metro Tech School. They were before us a little while back. They have a proposed traffic plan. I think it's more of a draft at this point. So I will turn it over to their representatives to give us what they have.
Hello, Lieutenant. This is Kevin Nigro. I'm with PMA Consultants. We're the owner's project manager. I know you've been dealing with Joe DeSantis, but I made him take a day off today. And so I'm pinch hitting for him.
Sounds good.
In the interest of time, we're going to just move it right along to, we brought our architects and engineers with us to describe the driveway and the access we'll be seeking. So I'm going to turn it right over to David Conway from Niche Engineering.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. I'm the civil engineering project manager for Northeast Metro Tech. Brian Zamolka's here. He's our transportation manager. He's done all the work on the study. He's going to take over the presentation. So
sorry, David.
That's all right, Kevin.
Oh, how's it going, everybody? Brian Zamolka with Niche Engineering, the transportation consultant on this project. If I can share my screen, which, oh, there we go. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm just going to breeze through this real quick. First, right off the bat, I mean, Jessica and David's presentation on the what they're doing for bicycle infrastructure is awesome. I really love it, and I can't wait to see what the plan's going to look like. And you know, working with this school and the Breakheart Reservation right there, it'd be great to see what kind of recreational infrastructure be in place and how we can work with the MAPC. But let me dive into our project because I don't have much time here. What we did is we understood, you know, that there's going to be a lot of traffic being added to this area. So we wanted to do our initial study. We looked at, you know, we went out there initially, saw how terrible the intersection of Hemlock and Farm is, unsignalized, and understanding that we had to reduce the amount of interactions between the Wakefield High School, the redeveloped Northeast Metro Tech, and Farm Street traffic. We decided it was best to have an additional access point. Just kind of looking more, that Farm Street, Hemlock Road, it doesn't have a significant amount of crashes as you compare to the statewide and district average. But however, over the past 5 years, so when we did our study, there was 18 crashes. So anything we could minimize that, like just like Lieutenant Anderson said, 0 is better than a lot. So, the alternative driveway would reduce traffic there. So to hopefully help with that mitigation just at that driveway. Just kind of quickly what we're doing, the impacts of the additional driveway only benefit, access at Farm and Hemlock. We're taking away almost 100 vehicles during each of the peak hours, the morning and afternoon, and adding them to the new driveway over at on Farm Street, just south of Old Nahatan. That comes with a cost, though. When we looked at this, we wanted to look at sight distance. We wanted to make sure that it's going to be safe access. And what we found is coming from the northbound, it's not going to meet the required sight distance. Therefore, we kind of took an approach and looked at what kind of mitigation measures we can do. And having a signalized intersection was determined to be the best approach. This is what the proposed intersection is going to look like. And this is kind of still a working phase. But what we'll do is provide a signal that would provide an exclusive phase for left turns into the driveway, and provide have that signalization for all traffic coming out of the driveway, which it's going to be more heavily concentrated in the afternoon than it is in the morning. Now, mind you, this traffic signal is going to operate actuated where it will only turn red on Farm Street if there's people coming out the driveway or turning in, having a left turn in. So throughout the rest of the day, you're going to see basically greens the entire time, and it would operate as it does today. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You know, as far as what we're doing to the road, we're putting some pavement markings down. We want to mill and overlay the area where we're putting pavement markings and where it's to be disturbed. You know, I look at it as kind of a pride of ownership kind of thing. When you're removing pavement markings, you're gonna, you know, have to eradicate the old ones, which leaves grooves. So, you know, from an ownership standpoint, and you know, what is best for the community visually is to really just take off that first layer of asphalt and put brand new stuff, brand new pavement markings. You're gonna have to put some posts in. We're gonna put some drainage structures in there to capture any runoff from the driveway. And that's really, you know, the super high level. Like I said, it's in the works right now. Definitely open to opinions and, you know, community feedback. That's why we're here today. And, you know, we will address this as necessary. But, you know, what we're really doing here is helping alleviate traffic along Farm Street, because there will be additional traffic as a result of this school development. It's inevitable. So what we want to do is mitigate it in a way that limits disruption to the commuter traffic along Farm Street and provides adequate distance and safety for all students and parents coming out of the school. So that's where I'm at. I wanted to keep it brief, but if there are any questions, please you know, say them.
Thank you, Brian. I think I'll turn it over to Bill first, and then I'll comment after.
Yeah, I think I'd start first off with the accident history that you noted. I mean, I think a lot of the problem out there is related to speed. That's probably one of the big issues, considering you're coming on a huge incline to that Hemlock Road intersection. So have you been in contact with the folks that are working on the high school? Because at this point, they're looking at a potential roundabout in front of, you know, at that Hemlock Street intersection. And you definitely have the area to do something similar. I'm just a little hesitant for the town to absorb another signal, especially with, you know, the need to probably phase this through and having, you know, issues with the high school in that PM or afternoon, you know, rush out. So, I mean, have you done an evaluation to see if that would work here as well, so that we're not, you know, burdened with another signal?
So two things there. The team has been in contact with the you know, Wakefield High School, and kind of, you know, from a high level seeing what they're doing. And to address your roundabout situation, you know, roundabouts are always looked at in traffic engineering as an alternative. Lately, everybody's been kind of pushing for them because they're continuous traffic. However, they come at the cost of obtaining a lot of right of way. And in this area, with all the woods, you'd be really diving into that, really have to grade that out, and you'd have to take some right away from the west side of the street. So there's a lot of taking involved and a lot of reconstruction involved with a roundabout. However, if the town is open to that and is really adamant about that, we can definitely look into see, you know, what can be done there, the cost, the implications, and definitely take that into account.
Yeah, I think it should be at least something that's evaluated. Yeah, I mean, you definitely have the area, you know, on your side. If the road has to be modified to make that work.
If I could add to that, this is Kevin again, OPM, and I don't want to set unreal expectations. Everyone should know this is a MSBA project, and we're bound by their reimbursement guidelines. This is also being funded by 12 different cities and towns, and we do not have the ability to have MSBA participate in any of this work that's being shown. Now, cost should not be the only driving factor, but what is the concern is the right-of-ways, seeking right-of-ways, any land takings or right of entries, all again, non-reimbursable. And, you know, given this economy, given what's going on in construction, that would be a further delay to this, putting this interchange in. This is something we want to do right away to help alleviate the problem down at the bottom of Hemlock and Farm. And I can tell you that I don't know how far we can get into this investigation. As this is already, coming at a cost to the project that's non-reimbursable. I don't know what the likelihood is that I have limited knowledge. I defer to our traffic engineers on the roundabout. I understand they cause more accidents, but less fatalities, something to weigh and consider. But my concern is
I don't know.
right of ways, right of entries, land takings, and the difficulties and delays that come along with that. If you could give us some parameters of to what extent.
On your side. Kevin, you own all the property on your side, so the right of way piece, you have area.
Yeah, then we'd have to realign the road though, Bill, right? In order to get into the, again, I don't want to set unreal expectations. You tell me what the parameters are for the investigation and we can investigate it. But given the additional cost and having to go back to our funding partners, it's not something that I think we want to do. I'm trying to be just upfront and honest with you, Bill.
If I can just chime in while we're talking about investigation, I don't think it's a heavy lift to put a concept plan together just to see where it falls on the plan, see what the options are. I wouldn't see that as an undue burden just to have somebody put a plan together and see what the impacts are. I don't think would be asking somebody to acquire property.
No, especially when you own all the side of the road. I mean, yeah.
So
these are.
We could ask.
You have a pricey proposal right here with adding all the signal equipment and everything that goes on with it. So, yeah, in all likelihood, you have a potential to even save money for your client. So
yeah, okay.
It's just some things we're looking for a concept. I mean, that's why we come to these meetings to provide input. We're providing it.
I have no problem with providing a concept as Nick just volunteered to do it. That's fine with me.
Yeah, we can do it. It's not the quickest effort, but it's definitely, right in the wheelhouse that we can do.
Yeah, Kevin, we can do a test fit. It just to narrow down the kind of my concern. It is like we do own the east side, but we don't own the west side, and as a school, we don't have the ability to do taking. So we really it would have to be working over from the existing right of way on the west side over, and that might mean some long, but that's what the test fit will show, right? So if folks understand that would be maybe our parameter going in, that we're not going to do any takings on the west side, that would kind of give us clarity when we do the test fit.
I think that would be understood from my perspective.
Okay.
Yes, without a doubt. That's not, I think, what we're talking about. But again, adding signals to the town is not something I think that we're really looking for. This provides some traffic calming components too. There's ways to enhance, mobility with bike and peds with that configuration as well. I mean, I think there's a lot of pieces to it, and obviously, you have issues with the driveway as well with conservation. So there's a lot of plays and pieces that are involved here. I think just having a good evaluation of all of it makes sense from the town's perspective, and that's the feedback that we're providing you right now.
Yep, and definitely we'll put something together. But just food for thought here, as I mentioned, this signal is going to be primarily active during pickup and drop off of the school, and will basically not have any impacts to the main line throughout the rest of the day and on the weekends. However, a roundabout does have that impact because you're naturally deflecting traffic for commuters. And that wouldn't be just the peak hours, that would be throughout the whole day. So just food for thought. We'll definitely put the concept together, but just in my opinion, because it's not an intersection that's impacted throughout the entire day, that a signal might be better to maintain commuter flow and still accommodate all the students and parents and employees.
And Bill, if the high school has a concept on their roundabout,
they do.
Okay, if we can grab that, because I feel like roundabouts, if you do multiple ones, they want to be kind of twins of each other, right? So you kind of get a rhythm of like the geometry, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know for a fact, and we've had residents that have come to this committee talking about speed issues on this road to start with. And you got to keep in mind that this signal, if you're just looking at this one section, yeah, it may make sense. But then when you add in all the stuff that's going on down in Hemlock, when you're saying that this is going to actually, be operating right during that PM or AM, school dismissal and arrival periods. Well, that's when Hemlock is also having issues with people coming through there too. And then we have another signal down the street. So all of those are all tied in. So, I think we can't just look at this in a vacuum. So that's part of where the town's coming from with the request.
Of course.
Yeah,
And just given the distance though to the adjacent intersections, I don't think they would be interconnected. However, we do want, just to have them generally work together. So, we'll definitely take a look at it. And we'll see what it looks like.
So do we have a copy of the traffic? So you showed some traffic counts and some turning movements and all of that. Was that, I don't recall ever seeing that in my office. So I'm assuming you have a report or something that you've generated.
It's there, Bill. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've taken a quick look at it. My biggest concern is that the signal is not warranted. So
you got it.
That's
that's correct.
That's an issue. That's an issue for the town.
Well, it's an issue for the town to take on a signal that's not warranted.
So this comes up with a lot of school projects that we do, because it's not necessarily warranted by the MUTCD if we were going to do an infrastructure project where that intersection has experienced degradations throughout the day. However, this is looked at as more of a mitigation measure to accommodate the added traffic that's going to be happening during those 2 peak hours. So we don't look at the 8-hour warrant. We look at the peak hour warrant just for this. And we do highlight in there, it doesn't meet the warrants. However, we have to think of this as more of a mitigation measure than a public infrastructure warrant for signalization.
All right, we're going to take Steve Mayo first. He's had his hand up.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Number one is the Hemlock and Farm Nahant intersection, as Bill mentioned, is being looked at as part of the Wakefield High School project. And there's actually and that involves the DCR, as we know. There's actually a meeting involving just kind of start that process for the realignment with the DCR, really from a legal standpoint next week. I'll share that with Lieutenant Anderson if anybody, or Bill, if anybody wants to hop on that. It's more about the legal issues and getting that going than anything else from an engineering standpoint. The second point is, I think when great points by Bill Renault on the looking at that the new driveway, which I like, by the way. I think the new driveway is going to solve a lot of problems down at Hemlock and Nahant. I would think that the where the vocational school owns the land on the is that the east side of it? All right, I think on the west side, it may be, that land may be owned by the light department, our light department. So there may be some maybe a little bit more, maybe easier to if we needed it to work something out. So I think looking at that and maybe bearing that in mind may help in the future. So thank you.
Joe Conway, did you have your hand up, or you?
I was just going to echo what Steve said. So across the street on the west side, the Wakefield's public utility actually owns from the north side of Harmon Road all the way to that house on the corner. They have a 12-acre parcel there. So it appears, looking at this, that they own significant frontage there. And I'd be happy to help facilitate a conversation if we have to go down that road.
Okay. Anybody else from traffic advisory? If you want, you can just unmute. Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo what everybody said. We need another option because the biggest criticism we receive about our committee is that we don't look at things holistically, and the truth is we do as much as we can. We don't know what's going to go on with the high school development. Something could fall through there, and what we'd like to see happen may not happen. So I think we definitely need options. It's very difficult when looking at developments in town to really look at them as holistically as we'd like, because developments change, funding, changes, and what we think is going to happen doesn't always happen. So having options available to us is really the only way we kind of can look at the big picture and have an idea of how it would work if the high school goes through, if it doesn't, if the realignment has issues with DCR and so on and so forth. So I would definitely like to see another option for this intersection here. I like the driveway. I'm not against having a signalized intersection with newer drivers or a lot of newer drivers exiting the driveway from the Voke. So I definitely see a potential benefit to having a signal there. But I also see some conflict too with having too many signals in a short stretch. And to Brian's point, yeah, that signal would be green most of the time unless somebody was exiting the new driveway to the vocational school. But on the flip side, that doesn't really do anything for our traffic calming concerns of cars speeding from Saugus into Wakefield, whereas around about May. So having a couple of options, I think, would help us to make a better decision. I'm going to turn it over to Julie first. Julie?
Just if I may just say one thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
Just regarding your traffic calming, by narrowing those lanes and providing those that extra, we're down to 2 11-foot lanes now, and technically your through traffic would only be 11 foot. That is a means of traffic calming by just narrowing the lanes in itself, and it naturally reduces speed. So
no, point taken, although not as much as a roundabout would. But,
that's not, no, you're right.
but no doubt. I mean, when you change a roadway in any way like that, it naturally slows people down. They have to pay more attention, and I definitely agree with you there. But we see some high speeds on that road, so it would be better to have something a little bit more than that. Julie?
You guys are the experts, but just 2 things I want to keep in mind. I know you've already brought up bikes, but I would love to see these designs with bike lanes in them and ways for pedestrians to cross. It's a pretty wide road. And the other thing is just don't forget taking a left out of Old Nahant is challenging. And I would just wonder how that plays into all of this as well.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Paul. You had your hand raised for a while. Paul Rybicki still with us? All right.
Hello.
Yes. We have you
Sorry,
now.
I was having trouble unmuting. I would ask a few questions on the new driveway that's being proposed. Could somebody tell me the length of that driveway?
Anybody
is anybody from the landscape architecture team here?
I mean, I'm sorry, I can't give you a number offhand. The driveway runs from Farm Road down to the existing school site. It depends what you would.
I think its key importance here is a driveway is a short piece of pavement getting into a building or a property. This looks like an access road to me that's being proposed with no thoughts for the pedestrians. We're gonna have 1,600 students there. I don't see any sidewalk or bike lane, period. We've already had a fatality in the parking lot at the Vogue. So how could we be looking seriously at putting in the driveway without any consideration, unless I'm missing it?
That's one area we'd look to, work with the MAPC and see if they have anything planned for that area and how we can contribute, because, if you want to provide that sidewalk connectivity, we'd have to put sidewalk down all of Farm Street. And I don't think at this point the project is looking to do that. But just putting sidewalk just in front of our driveway in itself really wouldn't do much.
There's going to be a lot of kids walking on that quote driveway, and it's just a matter of time before someone gets hurt.
Yeah, we're actually the school specifically, we actually have a meeting with the DCR in about 25 minutes, of one of a series of ones. But the access to the fells will be through more what you would consider the existing school site, the existing gate. We're providing parking for folks there. The desire with this piece is not to have pedestrians on it or bikes on it. So it's been purposely designed not to have a sidewalk, because there's no sidewalk on Farm Street and there's nothing to lead it to. So the safety question has we feel we're addressing by not providing one, because we're trying to discourage this route, and it's a vocational school, so there will be some kids walking, I guess, maybe to and from school or biking, but not as it would be for like a Wakefield High School. But that was kind of like that was the kind of looking through the hierarchy of how the site wants to be managed, where we want people walking, not walking, biking, not biking. That was the decision that was made.
Yeah.
David,
If I could jump in,
So will
David.
there be signage indicating
Yeah, if I
pedestrians
could jump in
prohibited?
just to help
Can-
David, we did
Sure.
take,
Hold on one second.
we did take access into consideration internally to the driveway and the site when when the new old school comes down as well. And we are providing a sidewalk from the lower, where the lower portion of the parking would be up to the school, and then a contiguous sidewalk up to the where the gatehouse is, the security gate. And could pick up from there and incorporate our sidewalk design with the Wakefield High School, which we anticipated doing. Second is we're meeting, we have met several times with our partners DCR, and they did not want a sidewalk or any access off of our driveway because they felt that would encourage people to arbitrarily walk into the Breakheart Reservation, and they wanted to maintain the main gate access and egress, which we're doing.
And Kevin, that's a good point, and it also leads to what Chief Scory already said is, and I think they'll like looking at that's the holistic picture. I think we kind of need to maybe walk the TAC through that at some point as well, because right now we're just zoomed in on this intersection as like it's the only thing in the world. So I think that's a like if the I don't know in what form folks would like that to happen. I know this is the first time most of you're really seeing this, so but to kind of maybe walk through an overall strategy for the site would probably be a good thing at some point.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of an overview, but I think at our next meeting to have a more comprehensive look at what the plans are would be helpful.
So along those lines, because what would just to kind of give us some direction, right? I think we'd like to do a test fit for the roundabout, but what would you like to see from us next time? I think maybe a holistic, like overall site plan. This is this is where people will come in. This is where the walkways, and we have some really nice, interesting pedestrian features that that are part of the project. I think we'd kind of like to to people understand so that we're not don't want people maybe walking through this intersection, but through the rest of the site, we're trying to make it as accessible as we can.
No, I think that would be great for the next meeting.
Okay, I think that's something we can walk folks through. Anything else we maybe want to focus on?
Let me continue on. We have a couple of other with some more public comment, and then that might help us narrow that focus. Bronwyn Del Volpe.
Good morning, Bowman Della Volpe, 8 Cyrus Street. Thank you so much for the presentations and all this information. I needed a little clarification on when you speak about driveway, what specifically are you talking about from point A to point B?
I could pull up a map. Well, does anybody have a site plan? Because
I think we can show you the overall site plan fairly easily next time. And we could pull it up now, but basically there's a new access driveway from this intersection we're showing through the site, connecting to the existing basically the guard. I mean, I think everyone knows what the guardhouse is on Hemlock Road.
Okay, so it connects up to, does it go all the way up the hill to where the drive stops now near the vocational school?
Yeah, so do you know the guardhouse?
Yes.
When you enter the vocational school?
Yes.
Consider like that as point A, And then point B would be this intersection we just showed you.
Okay.
But we'll cover that in the next one. We'll show you an overall map and walk through it and where it has sidewalks adjacent, and then we have a boardwalk and it runs up the hill through the site where the new high school is. For the parking off of it, we can. I think that will be helpful, and that we can also probably we'll get those material, or at least the slides out before ahead of time, so what people aren't seeing maybe the first time at the meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Okay, thank you.
Any final comment from any members of TAC or town officials?
I did have one other question, if I may.
Sure.
There were several comments made regarding increased traffic. Which entity is going to be generating that new traffic?
The increased size of the school.
I'm sorry, the increased size of?
The school, the Northeast Metro Tech school.
Okay, all right. So then can we assume that people are going to be using the existing Hemlock corridor to access the new vocational school?
I think it might be easier to describe and show you when we show the site plan, but the desire lines of where the pickup drop off is and where the school is going to be, it's more enticing to use the new driveway, whereas Hemlock is going to be, it will be used somewhat by the school, but mainly an access route to the DCR Breakheart Reservation. And as Jessica and David described before, they're looking to have improvements to Hemlock Road as is. So
I see, but there is a new road being built specifically for the vocational school, correct?
yes, that's the driveway that we're talking about.
Okay. Where does that end, though? I thought that ended up further on Farm Street, closer to the Saugus line.
Maybe bring the intersection plan back.
Yeah, 1 second.
Because if there's a new access road being built specifically for the new vocational school, then should it not be, mandated use of that as opposed to Hemlock? Therefore, that would, have a major impact on this whole intersection that you're talking about. I mean, why build a new access road if it's not going to be utilized?
Well, we anticipate being heavily utilized because the naturally somebody's going to want to stay away from a heavily utilized intersection. By that, I mean Hemlock and Farm. So if there's an alternative route to access the school and honestly more efficient, and you might be able to see this, like I said, when we show the site plan, but the desire would be much more to use this driveway than it would to be using Hemlock.
Okay, but desire is one thing. I'm trying to be practical, environmentally and economically speaking. If it's not a mandated use thing, then why build it? Why spend that money and tear up the environment? If it, you can't leave it to driver desirability to use it. And again, it's got to be one or the other. I mean, people have to use that or don't build it. And I think that decision has to be made before you can finalize any plans at all for the Hemlock Farm intersection. Am I correct?
Well, the Hemlock Farm intersection will have to work with Wakefield High to see what they're doing exactly and their process. However, it comes back to the concept of, when something's established, like another access point, people might at first be reluctant to use it. But then when we see as time goes by, they might see the benefit of using that driveway. And as it becomes more and more efficient, they'll realize that it's more feasible and more efficient just to use the driveway rather than Hemlock.
Right. But that being said, this school, with this act, we envision this will be heavily used, and also the school does have the agency as a school with their students to work with the town to, you know, if we want to have to tell students that this is the access they need to use to come and go, or what, you know, however it needs to get managed in conjunction with the high school, that's something the school is willing to take on. As much as high school students listen to their principals, but you know, those are all issues I think we can work out, you know, more when we start to bite off some of these bigger issues as far as, you know, the existence of the access, and is it signalized, is it a roundabout, is it just a T with stop control, with calming and things like that.
Dave, we can certainly mandate that the buses use this. That's the easy part, is they're a vendor. So the buses would drop off and pick up would absolutely, we could put a prohibition on them from using Hemlock.
Are there numbers associated with the increased traffic?
I think we need to better use our time and spend some time on this when we have a better overview. I think you bring up some valid points, but we need to have a better overview from the developer to see exactly what they're talking about. So I think we're gonna move on from this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unless Dan, did you have something before we?
Yeah, Lois has got to leave for another appointment.
Okay, all
Just
right.
to make-
Not a problem. And I think the developer has a meeting, they said too. We appreciate their presentation. I think we definitely have some good questions, both from TAC and the public. So an overview will definitely be helpful. And I think another option for that intersection is when we see how that works in with your development ideas, we can make a better decision on that end. Do you guys have any closing comments before we move on?
Lieutenant, I did in the as we're going to work on this second option. Who is it that I would work with in the town to understand the right of entries and anything needed to work on people's property around the intersection? Would that be you or the town engineer?
The town engineer, Bill Renaud.
Town engineer. Okay, Bill, I'll work through Bill then. Great.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. I'm going to skip over to item number 9. Matters not anticipated, because Bill, I think you had something that came up for an intersection, maybe water, and was it Water and Butler that you?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I received an email from a resident with concerns about Water in Butler, asking for a signal, actually, as we're talking about signals. Obviously not something I'm a huge fan of, obviously adding them, but I didn't know if we want to, as the committee, to look at least get some data collection out there similar to what we're doing at the Pleasant Street intersection. So we can get some volumes and look at sight lines, all that type of stuff, just to at least have some data to support it. Or if we think that it's really not an issue and this is the kind of an outlier request.
I think it's an outlier request. I don't really see that as a significant intersection there in terms of crash history. But Bill, why don't we talk offline and we'll take a look at what there is for a crash history, if anything, there, and before we spend time doing volumes and things like that. Yeah, let's give it a look first and see if it's something we want to dive into further.
Cool, works for me.
Sounds good.
Anything else, Steve?
Yeah, very, very quickly. While you're looking at Water and Butler, can we take a look at Water and Montrose again? We got some inquiries there, and it may be looking at that intersection, how it lines up, and look at the if there's any shrubbery affecting sight lines, things like that. We can go to the homeowner.
Yeah, so there definitely is. We've looked at that a couple of times.
Yeah.
We've reached out to the resident to cut some stuff back. It's also
I think they did at some point.
They have done some. There's also some other opportunities, I think, too, Steve, that would be a little bit more expensive from an improvement standpoint. So, we have the gas station, and then kind of the convenience store with that kind of wide open area, and some pretty wide travel lanes. There might be a way to kind of realign that intersection and kind of kick it a little bit more into the road, which would improve sight distance. So that's something that we've looked at. And we've prepped as a potential project and looking at costs for that. So I look at that more as like a sidewalk improvement. And then that would go pretty much all the way down to Farm Street and kind of realign that sidewalk on that side and kind of kick the road in and repaint to make it work.
Yeah.
So
That would be great because there are a lot of kids that walk to school that way.
yeah. So that's definitely something we're looking at.
Yeah, so similar to the other intersection, I mean, trying to maintain that vegetation will, that'll just be a constant battle.
Right.
Losing battle, right?
Losing battle.
They keep growing.
Thank you.
The only other thing I had, guys, and I meant to bring it up when we were talking about the rail trail improvements, was our 2 motorcycles are aging. One we own, one we lease, and they see a ton of use by our offices in the spring, summer, and fall. But I can anticipate with the rail trail, if it really develops the way that we're hoping it does, it's going to be really our primary way to respond to emergencies quickly. We have bicycle patrol officers, but in the rail trails that I use on the North Shore, a lot of them have like a bollard or something where vehicles couldn't drive down the rail trail, but it's wide enough that a police motorcycle or an ATV, with a stretcher could get down there. So we've done a lot in terms of asking developers to contribute to signal upgrades and things like that. But I would just like to put on everybody's radar if we could consider asking some of the developers in the future that may be contributing to the rail trail to contribute to funding a police motorcycle or 2. It's something that doesn't typically come up in our capital request because it's more of a priority to replace an aging police car than it is a motorcycle that sees maybe 6 months worth of use. But they do see a good amount of use, and I anticipate them being a primary method of response for us. So if we could keep that on the radar, it's kind of a short money item for some of these developers, considering what we're getting for contributions for signal upgrades and things like that. So if we could do that, that would be not only appreciated, but I think it would be a big help for us.
Sure. And so have you've been plugged in on the configuration of the crossings, right? And the trailheads and how that's all going to work. Are you plugged in on that? Okay. We might want to just chat on that access because National Grid will have small little, essentially like little access roads with gates that'll be there too. So you'll have the potential to even bring on a squad car or something down there too, with the like little knock box and everything.
Yep.
So we can chat about what you might want there. So we were successful in getting a new Mass Trails grant to construct those trailheads. So that is in the queue right now. We're waiting on that letter, but we've received some notice that is coming down the pipeline. So
okay,
that's good news. We don't have a number yet on what that is, but the proposal was pretty hefty.
You're supposed to keep that under wraps, as I recall.
Oh, was I? We don't do that well. You and I both. You and I both don't do that well.
I'm not going to tell you a secret anymore, right? I'm not gonna
Clearly.
tell you.
Was that? I think you might be right. So you didn't hear that from me,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, so that's coming in the pipeline too. So
we'll edit that out.
Yeah. And then we're also looking at, kind of how we're going to design the boardwalk area. So we're going to have a sizable amount of boardwalk actually in Wakefield too. So we should probably chat on that as to what you want to have for weight ratings and stuff. I was assuming at least an ambulance could get down there.
Okay.
And Lieutenant, I'm thinking the police chief texted you that, so to get the plug in for the extra capital, and that's mine.
Oh yeah, actually, that's something I've been trying to get from him. And
can you send me what the cost factors are on those and what you'd like? And there's a lot of grant opportunities, and that would be something that wasn't on my radar before. So
that'd be great. It just we
can look into that.
One of them is aging and getting up there, and it's it would be, especially with gas prices the way they are, having motorcycles out there more would be good. So
and maybe a couple of e-bikes too for Julie.
Yeah, that's actually, I thought that's where you're going to be going on that. Joe. I thought that's what you were going to be asking for with an e-bike.
But we have 7 bicycles, and they'll be out on the 4th of July, and they're great. They get around quick, especially through crowds. It's good. It's definitely good.
It is good. It is good.
But the only other agenda item is item number 8. I will be taking a leave of absence as I will be heading to an extended training program, which I'm very fortunate to attend. But because of that, I will not be able to run any TAC meetings. So I'd like to make a motion to make Bill Renault the acting chair for now, and I think in the future we'd like to explore like a vice chair option, so that way if this thing happens in the future, we can run meetings without any interruption. But for now, I'd like to make a motion to make him the acting chair so we can continue on with our progress.
I will second that motion.
All right, seconded by Steve Mayo, and all in favor.
Aye.
I,
Bill votes for himself. Very good.
I think I got to, don't I? I'm not sure. If I'm supposed to.
You have no choice.
Do you really have any faith in yourself? You know?
How
Yeah,
long is it, Joe?
I appreciate the nomination, sir. Thank you very much.
Does it mean a pay increase too?
No.
You're killing me today. There's capital, there's pay increases. You're
Steve, I'm
killing
on
me.
my way up to talk about that pay increase right
Yeah,
now.
I'm sure you
In
are.
a few minutes.
So yeah,
I have one disclosure to make to the group here on Pleasant and Salem Street. And I think back in the early 70s, my mother got hit at that intersection. So I'm probably very, I'm aware of it, so.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. Yeah, like I said, we definitely were all on board with the crosswalk moving. That's not an issue.
And I'm concerned, with Pleasant Street being, there was some traffic calming there with the condition of Pleasant Street. Now that it's gonna be nice and smooth, people be more apt to blow through that stop sign, so.
no, very true. I will be gone from mid-July to mid-September, so I will not see you folks until October. We'll probably have a meeting in October, I would assume by then, because it's usually our busy season with traffic and developments and all of that. But if I don't see you, have a good summer, and I will see you in the fall.
Quite an honor, Lieutenant, for the town and for you, that you're part of that procedure, so.
Thank you.
Great
No,
job. Great
I'm
job.
on it. It's it's a very, very good program. So looking forward to it. All right, motion to adjourn at 10:27.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thank you.
Enjoy, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.